Hey everyone, it's Chelsea. Today I want to show you some really fun techniques using Stickles gel, gloss sprays, texture pastes, all kinds of things. This is truly mixed media because we will be mixing a few things together in this class. And I hope you will really enjoy these techniques. For this first technique, I want to show you using the Distress inks through my stencil, and then I'm going to be using 2 of the Stickles Glitter Gels. I just have to say, I love these glitter gels, you guys. They come in some gorgeous colors, and if you're going to get anything, get the Moon Dust one. I wish I would have gotten at least 2 jars of this because I almost used an entire jar because it's just gorgeous. So this one, I have the Moon Dust around the outside, and then in the center, that gold is Solar Flare. Yeah, Solar Flare is what it's called. So I'm going to show you how this all comes together. I have Tattered Rose and Picked Raspberry Oxide inks. And then I'm using this floral stencil. Love this stencil too. I love flowers, so you know, it's kind of a given that I would like this. So I'm just gonna place this down. I'm not taping anything into place this time. I'm just gonna go for it. I have my foam on my little mini inking tool here, and I'm just going to, I put the lighter color around the outside, the Tattered Rose. Give you a little peek. If you want to stop right there, that's gorgeous. And there'd be nothing wrong with stopping right at that point. But I really want to show you the glitter gels over top and how it just transforms everything into sparkly goodness. And I'm going to take the gold one first, the Solar Flare, and you just need a palette knife. And you can see how this is like jelly. When they call it a gel, it really is. It's just strange texture, but it works. So I'm just going to spread this over the center part of that flower, and I'm not being too careful with kind of where it ends and where it begins. I'm just doing it really organically. And then I'm going to take, you can either use a baby wipe or a cloth or a paper towel and just wipe off that palette knife before I go into the next color, because I don't really want to spread it from jar to jar. So this is that Moon Dust. And I'm just going to grab some of that and apply it all around the outside. So, and they are overlapping in places, which just helps blend them together so it's a little bit more seamless. And I'm not putting a super thick layer. I'm really scraping it down so it's the same height as the stencil. And once you have this done, you want to remove your stencil and you want to wipe that and your palette knife right away. So I'm just gonna pull up here and look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? And then basically I just set it aside to air dry. I have not tried heat setting these. I'm not sure with the glitter in them if they would heat set very well. I have just let mine air dry, and that has worked really, really good. Okay, so you can see how that just transformed those soft inks into this sparkly goodness. I do want to show you all of the colors because there is some differences between them. So I did this little like striped stencil here. I'm just going to, I took a split tag here. I just cut a tag in half and put it together. And then I'm just gonna put my stencil on top of that. Because let's be honest, you just need to be able to see these in action because they're gorgeous. So I'm gonna do the Moon Dust again. And they will look different over black and white or over colored cardstock even. It's whatever ink colors are underneath will affect them as well. So that is the moon dust. I love, here, maybe I need to tilt this. You see that rainbow of glitter in there? Oh, it's gorgeous. Sorry guys, I just have to go on and on. So I'm gonna clean my palette knife again before I skip to the next one. So this is the gold again. And it's funny because some of them are a little bit more jelly-like than others. This one is definitely very jelly. And you can put these on thicker through the stencil, is totally fine. You don't have to scrape them down and make it super flat. They can be more textured. And then this one is the Nebula, which is kind of like a mix of the two. It's looks kind of like the moon dust, but then it has these beautiful gold stars in it. And now this last one is pretty unique. This is the Asteroid color. I have used it. I just keep the tops on there to try and keep these nice and moist so they don't dry out. So this one is really cool. It's also a little bit jelly-like, kind of like the gold one. And it has these big silver kind of sequins in it. Very cool. There you go. You can see how it looks on black, how it looks on white. Definitely changes the appearance and the reflect in the glitter. For the next tag, I wanted to show you, I had wondered, okay, we got Stickles Glitter Gel. How different is that from the regular Stickles like glitter glue? And so I wanted to give it a try. Now it is more liquidy, so it doesn't stay inside a stencil as well. So you kind of want to be picky with what kind of stencil design you use. I tried it with a very open design and I had a lot of bleeding underneath the stencil. And then I used this little polka dot, which has way less open area, and I was a lot more successful with it. And I don't know if you can tell, you see how the top part of this tag looks darker and the bottom part of this tag looks lighter. That's because I tried two different things. So on the top, basically all I did was I took Stickles. That was the waterfall color. This is the cool mint color. And basically just applied it through a stencil. I'm gonna need some more there. Now, because this is a thinner medium, you really don't wanna overwork this. Try and do it in as few passes as possible. And then the other thing that I tried was I took some gloss texture paste, because I thought, well, this will make it thicker. So I took some of the gloss texture paste, and then I'm going to mix the Stickles into it. And I did use quite a bit of the Stickles. And just mix it all around. You do get kind of a little bit weird texture. It goes a little bit chunky. But then basically I just pick it up and it gives you a little bit more thickness to go through the stencil. Now I did try this with the liquid pearls, which also come in little jars like this. And I did not have much luck. They're a little on the thin side and tend to bleed under the stencil pretty badly. So I kind of gave up on that one. I'm just going to recap my stuff here. And I chose the gloss texture paste because I wanted that shimmer to still show through. If you went with matte, it would dull that shimmer. So you can see when it dries, this is just the pure Stickles on their own, and this is the one mixed with the gloss texture paste. I don't know. You probably can't see on camera. In person, you can see that this has more dimension and more texture. This is pretty flat, but just two different looks to maybe use some of the things you have on hand. There's that in the cool mint color. And then I'm just gonna set that aside and let it air dry. Now, before we move on from the glitter gel and the Stickles, I wanted to show you, I took the Sunray stencil and I used different colors and just kind of rotated the stencil with the Oxide inks and made my little rainbow here. And then I'm sure you can see those shimmery rays. So once I had done all the inking in the colors and I was happy with how that all filled in, I took it again and used the Moon Dust color, which I find really easy to use because it's clear, so it'll take on whatever color you put it over top of. And just added some shimmery rays there. And of course, I had to do a layout. You can see those beautiful florals in the background. So I did the exact same thing as I showed you on the tag with the 2 ink colors and then using the 2 shades of the gel, the Stickles gel over top. And it just created this beautiful pattern paper. I used some of the new wood grain in 2 different patterns. So there's this wood grain here and then another wood grain here. I printed out my journaling on a piece of cardstock, and then I also did my title with one of the new dies, and I cut everything in white and then used the 2 pink inks, the Tattered Rose and the Picked Raspberry, and little fingertip daubers to daub that all up. Some of the new wood hearts, and then these leaves here are from a retired leaf set. And yeah, I'm so happy with how that turned out. And I'll just rotate that so you can see all that gorgeous shimmer. I probably should have cut my paper so that I could have, you know, just not flagged this, and then I could have cut this up into chunks and saved that piece that's being hidden because it's a shame to hide any of that paper. It's so glittery and gorgeous. For this technique, I know the tag does not look super exciting, but I promise you I have some artwork to show you that is very exciting. So just bear with me. Basically what I did was I used my inks to color my texture paste. Now you can use the Oxide inks, but you can also use just our regular exclusive inks. So no matter what ink you're going to be using, you just want to smush it out onto your all-purpose mat. And then you're going to take the texture paste, the Opaque mat, and you just grab some of that and mix it in just like you're coloring frosting or something. Now, the nice way about using the ink to color your paste is you're not adding any additional liquid. You can use re-inkers to color your paste, but the problem with that is that it adds more liquid, which thins out your paste, which means you're not going to get as thick of dimension, and you're going to have a little bit more trouble if you add too much liquid to your paste, like running underneath the stencil. By using an ink pad like this, it keeps it the same kind of viscosity, and you don't have to worry about the spreading under your stencil. I'm just going to stick my stencil down into place here, some washi tape. And then take my paste and run it through the stencil, going in one direction, trying not to overwork it too much or press too hard, because that can lead to bleeding under your stencil, and trying to make sure that my stencil does not lift up. So you could always tape it down on both sides too so that it's not lifting up. You may not get a perfect impression every time with a stencil. It's kind of like stamping. You lift up and you're like, oh yay, it worked out okay. By applying in one direction and not pushing too hard and not like working it too much, you can usually get a fairly clean result, but not always. Sometimes things just happen and it goes under your stencil. If you use mediums that add a lot of extra liquid, like re-inkers or mists or something like that, then it will make your texture paste a little bit more runny, and you do tend to have some bleed under your stencil. Something else that you can consider too is with the transparent texture paste, you can also add things like glitter, like mica powders and stuff like that to even like the powdered watercolors or things like that, to color them, to add texture, add glitter, shimmer. So they are just really great blank canvas bases that you can add different things to and jazz them up. Now you do want to make sure that you remove all the paste from your palette knife, from your stencil. You want to wash that right away or put it into a bin of water. Your mat. The mat isn't as crucial because it is non-stick, so even if it dries on here, you can scrape it off, but that just is more work. So I like to clean up as I go, and that way I don't have a bunch of work at the end. But you definitely want to make sure you get it off your palette knife and off your stencils so you don't ruin them. All right, I told you guys I had some fun artwork to go with this technique. So basically, I use this as my background and to substitute for a piece of pattern paper. So I love how this turned out. Very bright, very fun. I got the inspiration from the new Party Time collection that's in the annual catalog. And that's what helped me pick my colors. So I used chipped sapphire, peacock feathers, and mustard seed. And then you can see where those colors mix together, like the yellow and the teal make a light green, which also works with this collection. And another thing that I did that I wanted to share with you guys is I used our pattern books. So I have my Make It From Your Heart Volume 3 here. And I actually used this pattern to do the layout. And all I did was I substituted this piece of pattern paper in the bottom with my stenciling. So if you're kind of lost on how, you know, maybe you only have a couple ideas of how you would want to use this on a layout. Another great way is to just find a pattern and choose which pieces you want to substitute with your stenciling. The splatter that you see in the background is actually the gloss sprays in turquoise, because I thought it went really well and it needed a little bit of splatter. So I hope you enjoy those pages, and that gives you some more ideas of how you can use these techniques for scrapbooking. All right, for this next technique, I love this. I've been doing this technique for a while now. It's something I discovered a few years ago. And what I'm gonna do first is create a background with my Peacock Feathers Distress Oxide ink. We're gonna be using texture paste and also the gloss sprays. Now I'm going to take my stencil and put it over top, and I'm just going to tape it in place. Maybe I'll add another one to the bottom here too. And then I'm going to be using the Opaque Matte Texture Paste again with a palette knife. And this time I'm just using it white. Now, if I haven't been filming, I would have done this inside my misting box, but because I am filming, that doesn't really work. So I'm just gonna try and be careful and not spray everything. I'm using Cheddar and Fuchsia. I'm gonna mix those up really well. And I don't want to soak this down too much, so I'm just adding a couple pumps of each color. You can see where they mix. They make orange. I was very purposeful in the colors that I chose. I wanted them to mix and look pretty together. And now I'm going to remove that. Isn't that just pretty? It's like, wow, what an impact, hey? Now I'm just gonna set that aside and let it dry. You could heat set this. You might get a little bit of bubbling from the texture paste, so depends if you want that look or not. You will see when this dries, the gloss sprays actually don't stay glossy. This is my dried one, because the texture paste kind of dulls out that gloss, kind of absorbs it. Now I have this gorgeous stencil. I could just grab a scrap piece of paper and press it on there. Really doesn't hurt when you're doing mixed media to have like extra scraps of white cardstock kicking around or watercolor paper, because then you can make use of all your little extra bits. And so you just get this nice print, and you probably can't see it on camera, but it is textured where there was extra texture paste. If you wanted that even more texturized, you would just put your texture paste on thicker. But isn't that pretty? So, I mean, you can cut that down and use it as a panel for a card as well. And now, of course, need to wash all this stuff up. For this next technique, I actually did some of the prep steps before. So I took a tag and I used this kind of square or diamond stencil, put the texture paste, the opaque matte texture paste through it, and then I dried it. Now you can either let that air dry or you can heat dry slowly. I did use heat drying, so I got a little bit of bubbling in some of the little bit thicker areas, but not too bad. And then for this tag, what I did was I used the gloss sprays over top. You can also use your inks over top. Both mediums work really good. I thought I would just show you the sprays. It's so super fast to do a background like this. Now, on top of that texture, you're not going to see the shininess of the sprays, but you can. Hopefully it's showing on the paper. You can see that kind of shine that you get from the gloss sprays. So it gives you a little bit kind of matte and gloss at the same time. I'm using the Lime and the Ocean. And I am picking colors that will mix together well when wet. You could also just use your inks and blend over top with your inking tool. That way you do see a little bit of white on the edges, which might be a look you want, might not be a look you want, but you can see some of the white from the texture paste unless you really dab really hard with the inking tool. And I'm just gonna set that aside and let it dry. For our final technique today, I did prep my tag already, so this is the finished tag, and hopefully you can see the shine there from the gloss. So this is the transparent gloss texture paste, and I have already gone and done that with the chevron stencil. Now I wanted to mention a little tip with this, is you've seen me a lot spreading paste going this way, up and down. Well, sometimes, as you'll see right here, with a chevron, because there's no little connections, like these pieces are just kind of flying loose here, I found I got a better impression, a cleaner impression, by taking the gel and going side to side like this. So just an FYI. And now I'm going to grab some picked raspberry and some spiced marmalade inks. And I'm just gonna start with the spiced marmalade. Now you can do this technique, this is a basic resist technique, with your, you could use clear embossing powder for the design if you want to, so use your Versamark pad and clear embossing powder. You could also use the matte version of this if you don't want the design to be shiny, it will still resist. And you can also use, instead of using distress inks, you could use the gloss sprays to go over top of it. Now with the gloss sprays, you do want to wipe off the design right away, otherwise it will start to dry on there. But I was able to do it successfully as long as I was quick with it. So I sprayed it on and then wiped off the extra that was on top right away. And something you might notice with the matte transparent paste, that the matte version kind of holds on to the ink a little bit more. So even with the distress inks, I found it kept some of the ink on it because it was a little bit harder to get it off. The gloss is a lot slipperier when it's dry. So I'm just taking a cloth here. You could use paper towel. And just getting all that excess off of there. If you use something wet, like a baby wipe or a wet paper towel or something, you will end up with kind of lightening or moving your inks. So I like to use a dry towel when I'm removing the excess like this. So there is that fun resist technique. I do have a card to show you with this as well. And I used the same stencil, the same gel, and all I did differently was I used Hexagons, our new stitched hexagon die in different sizes. And you can see that I put the gel on there and then inked it up in a rainbow of colors going up. And then of course I have my little sentiment here and some little rhinestones, little sparkles. So I love how this turned out. Of course, can't go wrong with a rainbow. And it's just a really fun resist technique. So lots of fun mixed media techniques. I hope you walked away with some ideas of how to use it in your scrapbooking and your card making. And I would love to see your creations. Please make sure you tag me if you post them on social media. And have a great day. Bye, guys.